Hello and welcome back to the May Gathering. This is our last session of this year's gathering, and the topic today is the residential student program. So this is a program offered here at the Krishnamurti Foundation where people come for about a year, and it's a work-study exchange. So they come here and they participate in the programs that we host here, participate in the dialogues, and volunteer their time to do various work around the foundation, from landscaping to archives to there's been some publication work in the past, as well as cooking communal lunches for the staff here as well as themselves, and also serving the breakfast at the retreat. The purpose of the program is to attract people who would like some time carved out in their life to really focus on the deeper questions that Krishnamurti brought up. So, and it's the providing of the space here that allows for that. So they live on the property. And so I have with me today Darrell and Amanda. We also have volunteers as well who come and stay, some short-term volunteers. And so that's who I have with me today. And so we're going to have a conversation, perhaps a little bit of information for you who are watching this about what it's like to live here, what it's like to be here. I mean, right now we're closed due to the virus. And so that's a kind of a giant component of the center that is now temporarily suspended, right? Because visitors from all around the world, I mean, Michael Cronin mentioned it earlier this morning in his opening presentation. Visitors from over 60 countries come here who are interested in Krishnamurti's work. And so perhaps they can share some of their experiences about what it's been like living on the property. And then we'll open it up as well to a larger discussion about some of the ideas through the programs or the dialogues amongst themselves that have arisen during this time. And as well as if you have any questions about the program, feel free to put it in the YouTube comments and we'll try to get around to it at the end. So with that, I think maybe I'll open it up with you, Darrell. And maybe you just tell us a little bit about what your experience has been and your time that you spent here so far.
Yes. Well, I appreciate your intro and being here, and people online. I appreciate you watching in and being patient throughout these last couple of days. I think that the quality of being here is rather extraordinary. And it's not really, of course it has something to do with Krishnamurti and his teachings and him living and dying here as well, but just the location within itself. Ojai is a very special location here in California. It's kind of a valley nestled away from the busyness of Los Angeles, and it has a profound aura to it. There's not a lot of natural aspects, a lot of plant life and animal life, and you can't really avoid it by any chance. There's a peacock not too far from our location who comes to visit every once in a while, and he does his natural call, and it's, you can't get away from it. Also, there's a profound quality here that's has something to do with stillness and quietness, especially in the nighttime. You can really feel it. It's an atmosphere that is conducive to this type of learning and investigating into the realms of how we're living as human beings on a daily basis. So it's kind of like a getaway. There's a lot of people who come here for retreats, and they seem to have the same feeling of, the stillness and a resonance that is quite different from being in a busy city or being occupied by daily life. It's something profound, and if there is the opportunity for anyone to come experience it, then I would definitely advise to do so. It's quite beautiful. And, that's basically what I've got a sense of since I've been here.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing that. Amanda?
Yeah, what I appreciate about being here is really the space, as you mentioned, to learn. I really think that's what brought me here. I was here 2 years ago for the May gathering, and I saw Oak Grove students speaking about their experience at the school. I saw a presentation about comparing the pedagogy of Krishnamurti with that of Maria Montessori. And those sparked questions in me, like, what is it about this place encourages and supports learning?
Yeah, well, perhaps that's a good place to jump right in. I mean, in your, it sounds like the draw for you or your interest is in education. I wonder, since you've been staying here, if you've encountered any of these sort of ideas on education, or how has it changed since you were here, 2 years ago? Maybe we could start there and open it up. I mean, as in, is there, what is the relationship in learning and then maybe by extension teaching? What is the relationship of the environment, whether that's the land itself and the space itself, being in a natural setting or being indoors, or we can go down that route, but also perhaps the environment of the people who bring a certain attention or focus to a space.
Would you like to start that off, Amanda?
Yeah, one thing that comes to mind as you ask that question, Gianni, is the softness here. And I think that softness comes not only from the environment, from the nature. We have beautiful orange trees here. We can pick oranges straight off the tree. There's a sweetness to that. We can pick our own avocados. But it's also the softness of the people. And I'm sure they're attracted to Krishnamurti's teachings, and they inquire into this themselves. But I think this softness, I feel this softness comes from a quality of listening. And we've been talking about, a quiet mind. And that is what struck me. And being here, having the opportunity to participate in week-long programs like What is Love, or Change That Cannot Be Sought, or readings of books like Freedom from the Known with Stephen Smith. All those create a space where, there's a softness and there's support. And it's not always easy, is one thing that I wanted to say. A lot seems to come up. One thinks that when one is in retreat, that it will all be gentle and peaceful. But this gentleness and peacefulness allows a lot of other emotions to come up. So again, that's an essential part of learning, I would say. And I think we support one another while here to look into these things, as waves, and just let them come. How can we look at anger together? How can we experience anxiety or frustration, which are things, that do come up in this space, and especially with the current situation. But it's the softness of the space that allows that allows a certain quality of learning about those things, and about beauty, about joy.
Yeah,
What I find most interesting about this aspect of learning, or if I can go a little more broader, the aspect of life itself, is this quality of communication. And I would like to kind of open that up a little bit about what I mean personally about communication. And it seems to me that life itself, even if I was not involved in it, is in a constant communication. Sometimes I find myself staying up a bit late and going outside to walk, and you hear this noise that's always continually expressing itself, whether it be the frogs or the owls or other creatures of the night. And you carry this on into the daytime, and you hear the birds chirping, and so there's this endless flow of communication, and we can expand that a little bit more and say, we have this profound object in space we call the sun, and the sun is in relationship with the earth, and they're communicating between one another via gravity or via the light that's expressed from the sun and interpreted by the photosynthesis of plants and leaves. So for me, this aspect of learning has a great deal, or maybe an overall deal of the essence of communication. And it seems to me that there's a certain difficulty in communication between human beings. Now, not to say that there isn't a natural flow of communication. I feel like we're, even if we were not to speak, there would be this natural communication involved, as the sun is naturally communicating with the earth without having to say anything about it. So there's this natural aspect of communication that's happening on its own. But we also have this other element of communication as human beings that are essentially dictated by verbal expressions. Now, in the realm of communication, they say that, I don't know the exact number, but maybe 75-80% of communication is nonverbal. But this verbal communication has a profound effect on the entirety of human communication. And you can even boil it down to the teachings of K. He was spending his life's work communicating something to other human beings. And we're also doing this on a daily basis, whether it be mundane or highly spiritual. So I feel like this aspect of communication is something that requires a lot of looking at and uncovering, because it's a life. This is what we're doing all the time, and this is how we learn. I go to school, and there's a teacher, and the teacher is communicating something to me, and through that communication, I'm learning. I'm learning math or social studies or how to speak English, and all these things are involved. And so for me personally, this space has given me an opportunity to look at the communication, how we're speaking, what we're talking about, and so on. And so that's kind of how I look at the aspect of learning, is through this means of communication.
I wonder if you think in this communication, I think having spoken with both of you previously, I know, and we're speaking on education now, right? There's an interest in education. Is there something that is, because I think the traditional view of education is very much, it's a one-way street, right? It's a one who has the knowledge or one who has the know-all teaches someone who doesn't know. And sure, they may do that in a harsh way or a softer way or a more sort of tolerant or encouraging way or a harsher, stricter way, right? But this could go out to either one of you, but how do you feel about that dynamic? Is there anything, because what I hear Darrell saying is that it's communication is going on all the time, not just with our words, and maybe not even just with sort of non-verbal expressions. If I make a frown, if my face frowns up or something like that, but something by being together in a space, there is a sort of communication, and only some of which we're clued into or conscious of. So I'm just wondering, in the context of education, whether you think is that sort of more traditional view of it being a one-way street, does that really kind of encompass the reality of the situation, or do you think that there might be something else? What is the relationship between student and teacher?
You want me?
Whatever you prefer.
That's a good question. This is for me personally. I don't want to speak for anyone else. But there's a certain, we're talking about communication. There's a certain feeling of that's being communicated when there is some form of authority involved in the education process. And what I mean by that is a sense that the teacher knows and the student doesn't. And this essentially feels like disruptive in the education process, because the person who knows, who's trying to communicate something to the person who doesn't know, may get frustrated because the person who's uneducated or in the process of being educated might not be interested in what's being presented to them. They might be somewhere looking at birds, or looking out the window, or playing with a pencil. And this authoritative aspect is, say, hey, pay attention. Hey, listen. Are you listening? I'm trying to show you something, as if I have something that you don't possess already yourself. And so this relationship between teacher and student, as we've all been educated in the structure of the process of education as we know it, seems like there's this barrier, this gap between the person who knows and the person who doesn't, and it creates a sort of friction and builds an anxiety where I have to know what you're talking about, or else I'm in trouble, or else there's something that's going to happen. Whereas if there wasn't this movement of I know and you don't, we're both exploring together, we're both learning together, we're both communing together. And so if I'm trying to show you something and you're looking at the pencil instead, I can say, okay, let's look at the pencil instead and play with that, because I don't know anything else that's more important than what's happening and what's the movement of learning that's happening now. Instead of having some type of agenda where you have to learn this at a certain time, and if you don't, then there's a mark off on your grade, and it seems like a profound struggle to uphold that structure.
Yeah, I agree. You mentioned attention. Where is the student's attention going? If it's not to solving the problems on a sheet in front of you, if that attention is going outside, then let's look outside. Maybe that's where we need to learn something from now. But that requires a great deal of sensitivity from teachers, and I think teachers need to be open to learning themselves. So I have worked as a teacher for several years, and it continues being a challenge. What is the best way for me to learn? What is the best way for me to learn with a student? So I think your question, Gianni, brings up two questions for me, which are, one, what is right education? And the other one is, what is right relationship? Because we learn in relationship, and it doesn't need to be a student-teacher relationship, right? We learn tremendously from our peers as well. We learn tremendously from observing people who clean up the space, that we're in. if we're aware of that. So, yeah, these are questions that I'll be looking at, I'm sure. As long as I'm interested in education and in learning, they will be coming up.
Well, we do have some questions coming in, if we'd like to turn to that. The first question we have is, do you follow any kind of daily structure? Are either of you focusing on any particular aspect of the teachings, or do you have guides there to suggest various focuses? Or are you on your own with what you want to go into?
I think it's the latter that we're, besides the fact that we have a scheduled for the times that we work on the land, or when there's a guest involved, setting up breakfast, and there's a lot of times that we're supposed to be doing something. But beyond that, that structure, we basically have the freedom to go into what we're interested in, whether it be the teachings, whether it just be going on a walk or a hike or a bicycle ride, or staying in your room and doing nothing. We have that space and freedom to find our own interest and to explore that. I feel like that's a profound opportunity, because daily life generally doesn't give you that space to, just to wonder and find out, what it is you're interested in, whether it be the teachings of K, whether it be, your own feelings and inclinations. And so, there isn't really a rigid structure beyond the fact that, we have to service the land and service the guest here.
Yeah, it is. I would say that it is an institution, right, with other people involved. So there are meetings, there are dialogues at set times, but outside of those more structured times, when we, can look at a particular book together, a particular passage together, there is a lot of free time to explore whatever is important to us. And yeah, there's a lot of freedom in that, which is very unique.
Well, that relates to the next question that we have. I feel like you both pretty much addressed this, but this person asks, could you describe what a typical day looks like for you as residents there? So perhaps if there's any other little details or something that you left out, you could go over that. Just a typical day.
A typical day here at the KFA involves a lot of time on the land and outdoors for me. So it's a lot of contact with nature. There are a lot of people who come here and just volunteer with weeding or planting olive trees, taking care of the land, cooking, that's something we do. I really enjoy cooking, so I've been spending a lot of time in the kitchen. I enjoy composting, so since I've been here, I've had the freedom to try and set up compost, and with people nearby, gotten worms. There's the idea of a little plant garden, so definitely a lot of time in nature, a lot of time learning from nature, observing our relationship with nature. And then, free time to inquire. I think, there are a lot of spontaneous talks that arise with guests or other volunteers or residential students or visitors who are here, people who are facilitating programs and have a lot of knowledge and are also interested in inquiring together. And finally, lots of walks too. This is a beautiful spot. So walks up Horn Canyon before that was closed, and just around this area.
Yeah, it's a bit interesting to answer that question because there's a pandemic transpiring.
Yes, yeah.
So like the first month or so here, it was a lot different. There was a lot of programs and a lot of people in close proximity. And so that's one of the highlights for me was, always being involved and seeing new people and engaging in, conversation with people that you normally wouldn't see on a daily basis. And so it died down profoundly for the last month and a half or so. But that's one of the things that you would expect being here. Like Michael Cronin stated, there's a lot of people who come here from all over the world just to be here. And you get to, talk to these people and see where they're coming from and their shared experiences. And it's almost, it's something that's very, for me, it's something genuine in it, where, we live in a technological day where now, there's, about 8 people in this room, and we're getting the opportunity to talk to, potentially thousands of people via online. And so we're almost in a day where our conversations are being held through a device, and to have the opportunities to come in direct contact with people and to speak to people on a consistent basis is something that is definitely worthwhile here. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it is interesting, how to rephrase it when you ask about a typical day, right? I mean, like you said, there's the programs, the visitors, most, if not all of the staff, a few staff live here, but other than that, it's been a little bit deserted, but I guess more silence. But for this next question, this person asks, how do you put into practice Kay's teachings? Bit of it's a change of pace on this one.
Yeah. I honestly think that it's impossible to do that. And I say that because, as human beings, we are technically involved in our thinking, and we're short on time, so I'm gonna make this short. How can you make a chair? I can show you how, and I can have a process, and I can lay it out for you, and you can copy this process and make a chair. But Kay's not teaching about chairs or how to make something or how to do something. He's pointing out something that's happening within the framework of our brains, and it doesn't seem like I can take the idea and put it in my life, because I don't know how to describe it, why it seems like that wouldn't work. And so I think that Kay's teachings in general is pointing you to yourself, and how are you living yourself on a daily basis. And I don't think that has to be approached by any method or how to. It's expressing itself all the time, and all you need to do is just see it happening.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'd say question everything, including Krishnamurti and his teachings. Go out there, learn from nature, from doing, from experimenting, and then go inwards. Look at what's happening inside, be aware of that. Be gentle and kind, and welcome that, and learn. Yeah, that's how learning happens for me.
Well, thank you very much, both of you, for coming here and sharing some insights into what it's like to live here on the property and explore some of these questions. They're certainly not easy questions. There was a couple questions we didn't have full time to get to, but they were, not as not of the nature of how do you put Krishnamurti's work into your life practice. So one is how long will you stay? Residential students stay for about 1 year. Any age restrictions for volunteering? The age restrictions are for both volunteering and the residential student program is that you have to be 18 or older, so you have to be an adult. Again, I would like to thank both of you for being here, as well as all of you for tuning in to this year's May Gathering. I'd also like to give a big shout out to Henry and Jaime, who have been behind the scenes here, making all this move so smoothly. It's definitely a new process getting it all figured out, and we hope all of you stay safe and stay healthy, and until next time.